Hello everyone, I am the Weather Dude. Welcome back, and today we have a big storm on our hands to talk about. And this storm will be making a nearly cross-country trek, and right now its current destination is the middle of the country. We're going to be talking about all the effects from it, the snowy side, the rainy side, and even the severe side to it as well. All the aspects will be discussed here. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So just judging by the alerts themselves, you can tell that this is like an active storm system that we have here just based on all the alerts. So let's go through them all. So the wintry side of things, you can see through Montana, Wyoming, and the Dakotas, we have winter storm we have blizzard warnings actually. So yes, blizzard conditions are out there right now and will be continuing later on. We also have winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings in this area. So it's basically western South Dakota, western North Dakota, eastern Montana, and then eastern half of Wyoming, and even some winter weather advisories trickling down into Colorado as well. We also do have some very dry conditions, at least for right now. The low pressure will stay away from this part of the country for the most part. There could be some lines of storms coming through Nebraska and Kansas and Oklahoma, but for right now there are red flag warnings because again it's dry and it's windy, and of course if a fire were to get started, it could spread very quickly. And we also have high wind warnings and wind advisories through the middle of the country because it's windy out there. So, and not that there's any oceans out there, but if you're like next to if you're next to a river, for example, like the Mississippi River, maybe if it's flowing in the direction, let's say you have a west wind and it's flowing west to east, I might be able to get some. Maybe you'll see some little waves. Sometimes that does happen, depending on how big the source of water is. There also is some flood watches down here in southeastern Oklahoma, northwestern Arkansas, and southern Missouri. I believe those are regular flood watches. I don't believe they are flash flood watches. Yeah, so I actually did zoom into this region, I think, so we can take a look at it. Yeah, so it is a regular flood watch. So a regular flood watch a flash flood watch means like the rain comes down very heavily and in a short period of time. Now in a flood watch, the rain can still come down heavily, but it's more spread out in a longer period, maybe like 24, 48 hours. And it also is referring to some of the rivers. So we may even take a look at the rivers depending on how much time is left, of course. But around Fort Smith, Arkansas, right, it's one of the areas, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Branson, Missouri, Ardmore, Oklahoma, all areas under that flood watch. And you can see just from Tulsa's radar, if you look on the bottom left there, you can see a really intense line going through Kansas and Oklahoma right now. So we're going to be watching this as well. And actually on their weather story, you can actually see what their National Weather Service is calling for: 3 to 4 inches of rain from Fayetteville to McAllister. So that's a lot. And even the yellow, right, is over 1.5 inches, which is enough to cause some problems in this period of time. I mean, that goes basically between Tulsa and Hugo. Tulsa itself could get over 1 inch. So this is valid from 7 a.m. Sunday to 7 a.m. Monday. So you're talking about a 24-hour period. And, normally these kinds of rainfall totals, like 2 to 4 inches, normally come, and it depends on your area, but normally it takes, a few weeks to get these kind of rainfall totals. So this is a pretty extraordinary system. And here is the severe weather side, and then we're going to get to a bunch of the other aspects as well. We're going to kind of be not necessarily bouncing between parts of the system. So maybe we'll be like on the convective severe side for right now. Maybe we'll start talking about the snowy side in a bit. But a marginal risk, widespread, but also just as widespread is the slight risk, so a massive area. And you can tell how the severe weather part loops back, and you can just tell that this is a big low pressure system. You can have all the convection and all the severe weather on that side of the system. 12 million people, actually, 12.4 million are under that slight risk, and an additional 5.2 million are under that marginal risk. So again, you're talking about a total of about 17.5 million people, more than that actually, 17.6 million. And some more higher, notable areas, more known areas include OKC, Kansas City, Omaha, Tulsa, Minneapolis. So again, and if we can actually turn on the cities, population. So you can see the more concentrated black areas, right? Like for example, the I-95 corridor, the more concentrated those black areas are, the more population there is, most likely due to those, bigger cities like Minneapolis, St. Paul, all right? So again, 12.4 million is a lot of people under this severe weather risk. And the tornado risk, I know 5% doesn't sound high, but for the Storm Prediction Center's website, it actually is, decently high. And we have two areas of it, right? About 6.8, 6.9 million people under both the 5% and 2% zone, so it's about the same number. But 5% for Areas like OKC, Kansas City, Tulsa, Des Moines, Overland Park, Kansas as well. And then the 2%. Minneapolis, St. Paul, Rochester, all areas with the 2% tornado risk. Wind, 15%, which is, again, decently significant, and hail, also 15%, but a bit further north and also west compared to the wind graph. All right, but we're going to get into some of the modeling now. So here we have the GFS model. We have other high-definition models as well, but we got the GFS, Euro, Canadian, and then the NAM and the high-resolution model also lined up. So here's a GFS. You can see the low, very, very strong system. Like 980, 979 millibars is pretty insane strength. And again, the snow is just going to be winding down by Sunday afternoon. And then you got some of the rain developing that we were talking about. And the severe weather will be coming before that as well. So you can see lines of heavy rain go through Missouri and Arkansas. And you can see another low may develop to the south and keep areas like Arkansas and Texas into some, heavy rain still. So again, that's why they're under a flood watch, because it's going to be more of a prolonged period of that rainfall. And speaking of rainfall, how much of it? Well, depends on where you are. So Missouri down through northeastern Oklahoma, around Fayetteville, Arkansas, this is like 2 to 4 inches. In some areas in northwest Arkansas, that brighter color close in on 4 inches. Areas near San Antonio, Texas, northeastern Louisiana, like going over 4 inches. You can see by that yellow color. North Dakota, this is snow. This is just a rain equivalent of it. But we're going to have the snow map pulled up next, so don't worry. But anywhere in the purple area is still over, I believe, an inch, right? Yes, so I was right. So over an inch anywhere in this purple area. So that's still a lot of rainfall, right, to get in this period of time. But obviously the areas in the red and yellow, you're going to be seeing 2 to 4 inches of rain or even over 4 inches of rain. That's going to cause some problems. So here's the snowfall map. And by the way, this is the 12Z run, so basically anything from this morning onward, right? Because GFS, obviously, and some of the global models are delayed. And I think their 18Z is probably just starting to come out now, but it won't be able to cover, I don't think, the storm event from the time I am recording right now. So sadly, I cannot pull it up. But the 12Z, you can still get a sense, right? 2-3 feet of snow in some spots, indicated by that yellow color, over 2 feet. And even the red color, over 1 foot. And this isn't just mountainous areas, although mountainous areas will be getting their fair share, like Wyoming and Colorado. But this is like, low-lying areas in the Dakotas. With the exception of course, we know the Black Hills in western South Dakota are pretty, mountainous. And you guys in the Black Hills, if you're lucky enough to live there, 50 inches of snow. Not quite sure. I mean, this is the Kuchera ratio, so this is the ratio of snowfall that is the most accurate, because instead of assuming a 10-to-1 liquid to snow, it actually takes into account how much liquid is going into it to determine your actual snowfall. So that's why the Kuchera ratio is better to use than 10-to-1. All right, so if we look at the European model, right, again, low winds its way out of there. And you can see coming down through Minnesota and Iowa, you can see that these bands of severe storms. And we're going to get more in depth into towards the end of the model runs here, and towards the end of the video, we're going to get into more in depth on these severe line bands. So be sure to stick around for that. But in the meantime, we're watching the low drift off to the north and east, and then the area of storms really drifts to the south and east, turns into a more of a rainfall event, because all the big low is pulling away. So this becomes more of a front, maybe some more rain. Although don't be surprised, of course, if there are still thunderstorms in there, but they won't be like deadly severe, not like they're more dangerously severe like they are today, right? And eventually that will move into the mid-Atlantic. Most likely Virginia points south will get most of those banding, and then everything does move offshore. Then high pressure builds in, and then you can already see by the 540 line some cooler air starts to come in, but that's a talk for another time. So here is the European model's perception on the rainfall. Again, similar areas, like from Branson, Missouri to McAllister, Oklahoma, right? That general area 2 to 4, with some very patchy areas like here, and here, going over 4 inches in that yellowish color. So, and by the way, widespread over 1 inch of rainfall, which really, if it falls in a quick enough period of time, really an inch is all you need to cause some problems in terms of rainfall. So, still a lot to deal with here. Now, European, sadly, only the 10-to-1 is available, but you can still get a good sense, right? Like 1 to 2 feet of snow across the Dakotas, and you can see how it kind of curls back here. So maybe even Nebraska, some of the guys in the Panhandle, potentially going over a half a foot. And again, it goes down the mountains of Wyoming, Colorado, not too far away from Denver, and those western slopes of Denver, because we know Denver is the mile-high city, but you go on those western slopes, they're even higher than Denver. So you guys could be picking up on some snow there as well. Onto the Canadian model now. You can see as the storm moves to the north and east, again, same general thing. We're just comparing models here. So you can see where the rain is forming down in Oklahoma after the severe weather pushes through. Now, this isn't high resolution of a model, so you really won't be able to depict it. But don't worry, we have higher resolution models coming out. We'll be able to depict that a lot better. But note that this dark green, right? If you were to look at it on a high resolution model, it would be like yellows and oranges, not greens. But this is the general area where severe weather is going to be in this general zone. It'll give you a good idea, right? Because you're on the warm side. You can see those 558 and the 564 lines. You know, some more warmer air, if you will, compared to the 540 line that's like compressed to the north. But you can see the warmer air is coming in like this. So of course, colder air here, warmer air here, and then they converge right on this line. Not to mention, we also got a low pressure to the south, you know, throwing things into the mix as well. So a lot of aspects working together here to form that severe weather. But then once the low pulls away, you know, like a tail front will form. We still got some rain and some heavier showers that will drape onto the south. So Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, this becomes more of your thing now. And the rain just sits down there in Texas. That's why don't rule out Texas, because you guys, especially from like San Antonio to Dallas, points south to like Houston, Galveston, even down to Corpus Christi, could be seeing some, you know, pretty major rainfall. This is going to be sitting there over the same areas, right? And with that said, here's your 1 to 3 inches of rainfall. Basically, again, San Antonio, Austin, over to places like Beaumont, or just north of which. Then you got your 2 to 4 inches of rain. Again, same areas: Branson, Fayetteville, McAllister. McAllister being in Oklahoma, and then you got through Oklahoma. You got that tail of like 4 to 5 inches, over 5 inches. Places even near Oklahoma City. So be on the lookout for some very heavy rainfall. And hopefully we'll be keeping check with the rivers there, because the rivers will probably, you know, go up very fast. They can go up for flash flooding, but even if the rainfall is not falling heavily in a short amount of time, even if it's falling over a longer duration, it still does take time for the water to all soak in and absorb into the rivers. So that's why usually, like after like you get a lot of rain, that the rivers get their highest like 1 to 3 hours after the rain ends, because all the water has to soak into the ground, if it hasn't already, because of all the flooding that it couldn't handle in the first place. But anywho, here's the Canadian model, and you can see the snowfall. Again, a little bit less, or at least a little bit less in terms of coverage. I would say that the central parts of North Dakota and Oklahoma do get more, I think, or similar compared to the other models. It's just that area of 1 foot plus kind of gets shrunk down a little bit. But Colorado, you guys get a good bunch, right? Over a foot in those higher elevations, half a foot or so for Wyoming, especially in the eastern part of the state. And then Montana, North Dakota border is what seems to, you know, stand out here on the Canadian model with over a foot. And I will say the Canadian model is more, well, let's say it's better dominant in the, you know, northern parts of the country, closer to Canada, because it is a Canadian-based model. I'm not saying it's going to always be right in this region, but it does do pretty well in that part of the country. 18Z fresh model runs in here for the Nano 3KM, right? And you can see, look at the low just sitting there and twirling. That's what I mean. Like, this is 12 hours from the first frame, not really moving. So that snow and that wind is going to be howling on the west and even south side of that low. So western North Dakota, even because it's going to loop around, even central South Dakota. It's just funny because, you know, central North Dakota is not really getting it, but you go South Dakota and it is. Again, all has to do with the low placement. And again, there's the high pressure to the west. So the wind, you can just see the wind tunnel is going to be howling, all right, especially through Montana and Wyoming and the Dakotas as well. So that's why the blizzard warnings are out. Winds are over 35, 40 miles an hour, even in some areas by a long shot. So yeah, it's a lot of wind and a lot of snow. But you can see, again, we're going to zoom in. This is the model I'll be using to look at the severe weather in a little bit. We'll be zooming into more of these bands, and they're very narrow, but they are there. Like, don't rule them out; they are there. But narrow bands will be making their way through. Then that rain redevelops into a pretty steady line that extends from, you know, even Illinois at this point, Indiana, all the way down into Texas, right? And then starts to fizzle out, and you know, respawns again. You know, afternoon, these rain showers will probably get a little bit more intense, as you can see here, and then start to fizzle out a little bit at night. But once it drapes to the south, the front kind of drapes south here, it will become more of a heavy rain focus with some isolated severe weather, whereas opposed to the severe weather that sets up over Minnesota, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri will be more, you know, severe weather and heavy rain will be along with it, if that makes sense. So here is the rainfall totals, and again, pretty good area, 4 inches plus. That's not all where I circled, but in that region, it is possible to see over 4 inches. Again, OKC up through Fayetteville, up through Branson, Missouri, south central part of the state as well. Even St. Louis could get close to an inch or two. Areas around Austin and San Antonio, 2 to 4. Not too far south from Dallas, you guys could be seeing a couple inches as well. So again, the high resolution models are more specific on what types of areas or what areas get the heavier rain. And of course, when you're about to see a storm very soon, it is nice to look at the high resolution models. And again, just like the Canadian, the foot plus is considered more on the Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota border, right? Kind of like the border between the 4 states in that sort of region. All right, so again, very heavy snowfall still. Severe weather obviously will be more of a dangerous for areas further to the south and east. And on the high resolution model, another good model to use when the storm is about imminent. There you go. So severe weather moves through, and then we got the rainfall. It's going to drape to the south, and I would watch out because even though the guys to the north, like in Minnesota and Iowa and Nebraska and Kansas, are going to get the severe weather, you guys in Oklahoma and southern Missouri, Arkansas, Texas, are going to be seeing some very heavy rainfall. So just because it's rain doesn't mean you rule it out. But there's your, again, models aren't good agreement here as they should be when the storm's about to hit. But 2 to 4 inches of rain and possibly more, according to the high resolution model, over 4, close to 5 on that border with Oklahoma and Texas, maybe around 4.59 as you can see right there. All right, so and then the snowfall from that even less than the Canadian actually, with the exception of the Black Hills of South Dakota, which drumroll please, probably over 3 feet, no, around 2 feet. Okay, still a lot of snowfall, but again, probably going to be avoiding most of the lowland areas. In the eastern parts of the Dakotas and Minnesota, but again, go a little bit west or down the mountains of Wyoming and Colorado, you will see plenty of it. All right, so now I think it's time, yes, to get on to the severe weather aspect as we wrap it up here. So the severe aspect of the storm, we are now zoomed in to the Central Plains area. So you can see to the snow to the north and west is going to keep on coming, the bands keep on coming, but then, there is the convection I was talking about. So when you're zoomed out to the entire United States, it's harder to see the bands of storms, but now you can see them, and they are coming with a vengeance here. Again, right around the border of Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and Iowa there, and then continue to move its way east. Again, another band forms behind that. This is the severe weather we're talking about. All right, and then the bands continue to move. We see another spawn of those storms in Oklahoma. Right, everything seems quiet, and then Sunday afternoon, here comes some more possibly severe weather, but also some more heavier rain will probably be the greater focus as there is a flood watch in that area. And then the rain just continues to move on and on to the south and east. So taking a look at some more severe weather graphics here, some more severe weather based graphics. We have the Cape. So basically this is the measure of that heat in the atmosphere that can really get these storms fired up. And you can see over the next couple hours, well, this is actually right now. This is 5 p.m. or so, or 4 Central Time. And then you can see look at the Cape, like it really grows. And you can see it has a sharp cutoff. And you might think, well, is that model error? Because how can it go from orange to nothing? Well, actually it's not. Because there actually is a sharp cutoff, because where the storms move through, the Cape is done. Like once the storm moves through, it's gonna clear out all that atmospheric heat. So there's gonna be a sharp cutoff here, obviously from when the storm moves through, but out ahead of it, 2,000 to 3,000 surface-based Cape is a lot, actually. That is just about enough, in some cases more than enough, to get those storms going, right? And even in those, you can see in the red areas closer to the line here, over 3,000 Cape in some areas, right on that line there, Kansas, Oklahoma, down to Texas. So decent amount of Cape. Now, when the storms respawn and refire up on Sunday, like I said, not as much Cape. It's over 1,000. I have been in situations here where Cape around 1,000 has provided severe weather, so it can still happen. Like I said, but again, nothing as conducive as it will be today for this area. Wind shear will be enough. It will be high, as you can see, right? There are some areas with some, reds, and those purples and reds is that, high enough wind shear, but the bulk of it will be coming in once the storms press through. But again, comes a little bit ahead of time. You get more shear out ahead of it, and those turning of the winds with height, you can see some spinning in those storms, and obviously that can result in possibly some tornadic activity. And then we have the supercell composite, right? So seeing those areas where we can see the highest chance for some supercells to develop, right? Not saying that there's going to be supercells if you're in a certain shade, but saying this says like, you know, what areas are the most conducive to see supercells. And that area would be southeast Kansas, Oklahoma, down to Texas, is that area where we see a pretty intense supercell composite here. Again, fizzles away and then comes back, and you can see when the storms or rain area refires on Sunday, again, supercell composite, again, like the Cape, is not as high. It is a little bit on this line here, but again, it's really not that high. Again, don't rule it out, but it won't be as high of a threat on Sunday, as per the Storm Prediction Center putting in a marginal threat as the highest threat for Sunday, whereas opposed it's slight for today. And then significant tornado parameter, which chance to see some significant tornadoes, it's looking pretty good here in Kansas and Oklahoma. So be on the lookout because these storms could, again, doesn't guarantee tornadoes, but a 5.0 out of what, like close to 10, it's, you know, it gets a good 50-50 probability you could see some decent, you know, tornadic activity. All right, so looking here again, between 4 and 5, some pretty high values in those purples. Again, fizzes away. Sunday, not as high, relatively close to nothing actually on the significant tornado parameter. So not as much of a tornado worry, but again, the rainfall will be the main threat for Sunday. Today, Saturday, will be the main threat for that severe weather. The gusty winds, strong hail, and of course flooding and possibly some tornadoes as well. So thank you guys for watching. This has been one heck of a storm to track, and soon, in a couple months, some different kind of storms called hurricanes maybe in our near future. So can't wait to gear up for that as well. But thank you guys for watching. This has been a very, very intense system, so stay safe out there. I am the Weather Dude signing off. Till next time, I'll catch you guys in the next video.